So for the two leaders that I would say that I guess that I am familiar with, one, he was my platoon commander when I was in the military, but he was prior enlisted and then he went LDO, so he went through OCS and all that stuff to become a commissioned officer. And he really knew what it meant to lead. He knew what it meant to be enlisted and to take orders and all that stuff. He knew how important things were at work, but he also knew that the sailors below him, had a home life, and a lot of them did have families. He never gave us ridiculous or like redundant things to do, and he never made us do something that he wouldn't do himself, which I thought was super good, especially as a leader. And he was successful. I know he had a lot of respect to the guys that I worked with. He was successful because he listened and understood. Even though you were in the military 24/7, even when you were off work, we did need to be home and we needed to be with our families, and it wasn't all about work. Um, Another one that I was pretty familiar with was when I worked at Piggly Wiggly. The guy that was in charge of me, he wasn't really that good. I'm, I mean, he hated everyone that worked for him, and I think it's basically just because he hated his life. I mean, he took out a lot of his personal anger on the people that would work for him. I believe he's unsuccessful, and he's unsuccessful because his attitude prevented him from getting promoted, which he also took out on everybody around him. And having anyone respect him enough to listen was just one of his problems, and I think that really annoyed him too. Um, but there was another one that I really looked up to, and he was my chief. He was my section chief. And like he never forgot where he came from. When he first got to the command that I was at, he got there as an E5, and he worked his way all the way up to an E7 before he left, which was pretty impressive. And he was always willing to help his people out. Um, and basically, like the first one, he knew what it was like to be the lower guy on the totem pole. And I believe he was successful because he really saw it from our point of view. He didn't go along with the chain of command. I mean, if there was something that he thought wasn't working or that shouldn't have been done, then he would voice his opinion. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes he got overruled. Um, and yeah, he was super good, and I think he was really successful. And the last one that I thought probably isn't successful now, it was a staff sergeant from the Marines, and he hated Navy people, which I mean I can kind of see. He was in E6. He's done like 2 tours, but to him, the Marines were the best of the best, and if you weren't one, then you weren't anything. And this was, he carried this attitude even to the people that were the same rank as him that were in the Navy. He wasn't approachable, and so yeah, I believe he was unsuccessful because really, I guess if you look at it from our point of view, if anything happened and lives depended on him being there, we honestly thought that he wouldn't be. And as a leader, no matter what branch of the military you're in, I don't think that that's something that you should really portray to the people below you, because you never know. His life might have depended on ours one day. And not saying that we wouldn't have been there, but there would have been some hesitation. And like how can you really like respect somebody and look up to them if you can't even look at them as a fair person and as somebody to trust to begin with?